pleasant good Thursday to everybody. Baseball fans, it's time for another edition of In the Dugout. We've got some interesting things on plate. Trevor Rogers joined by Bobby Rose and DJ Bradshare.
We got a great show coming today. We got some interesting prospects in the state of Oklahoma. Dylan Bundy making a name for himself in the Baltimore Orioles organization. Obviously, Ty Hensley moving up those draft boards. It's an interesting year in Oklahoma for different prospects, either in the minor leagues already or coming up on the draft.
Definitely going to be talking some pitching dominance, some Matt Kemp dominance, and the Baylor dominance. So I guess this is an entire dominant episode of In the Dugout. So go ahead and stay tuned, sit down. It's time for In the Dugout. So it's a big week in baseball. DJ, how you doing? I know we missed last week, but how you doing, DJ?
I'm feeling a lot better this week, and especially after last night's night of baseball. It was an incredible night of baseball. 3 walk-offs. Brian McCann, grand slam. Of course, I was going crazy, and the walk-off by Chipper Jones to end the game. So it was all in all, it was a great night.
That's just kind of poetic for Chipper Jones to end a game on a walk-off. Like if you're a Braves fan, there's probably nothing better that you can witness than watching Chipper Jones hit a walk-off.
Wouldn't it be amazing if he ended his career this year on a walk-off, like say in the playoffs the World Series, or in the end of the regular season if they don't happen to make the playoffs, just end his career on a high note.
I'm sorry. I don't think Hollywood could write a script that good. I really don't.
Right.
I just still can't believe that this is it. That this is his last year. I
still have some skepticism.
He still got it. I mean,
yeah, absolutely.
I think it's kind of a wait and see thing if he actually ends up retiring.
Here's my deal with Chipper Jones. In my opinion, over the last 15 years, he has been the most underrated baseball player in the league.
Most consistent,
and he has been absolutely the most consistent baseball player in the last 15 years. And I really don't think it's fair that he hasn't received the credit that Jeter has received, that Soriano received when he retired, and so Chipper Jones, he's just put up a fantastic career, and I really don't think it's fair to him for the amount of respect that he gets.
Do you think he is a Hall of Famer?
First ballot.
Absolutely.
First ballot? Okay,
absolutely.
That's what I thought too. I was just getting you guys' opinions.
Yeah, no, he'll be in there, and he'll be eligible for the Hall of Fame in what, like 2017, 2018? 2017,
It's usually about 10 years or 8 or so years.
Is it that
after retirement?
Is it that long?
I thought so.
I thought it was like
7.
7.
Yeah.
7.
Yeah.
Anyway, we're going to jump right into the show today, and we're going to talk a little high school baseball. What are your thoughts on the top prospects in Oklahoma this year?
One prospect I want to talk about is one who's already in the league, is Dylan Bundy. And Dylan Bundy's already off to a fantastic start. And Bobby, you pointed that out, and you had his stats. The kid's like blowing by kids in single A ball.
He's in single A. Of note, he's actually playing for former Oklahoma baseball player Ryan Miner, who's the manager down there at the single A affiliate of the Baltimore Orioles. He's something like his batting average against, I believe, he's only faced 50 hitters, which granted is a small sample size, but it's still pretty impressive that he's only given up 1 hit against those 50 batters. Batters are 1 in 50 against him. I don't think he's given up a run yet. The first 39 batters that he faced all went down, and he had something like 30 strikeouts versus 2 walks for so far in his innings, like in 17 innings or something like that. So I mean, he's been very impressive. He had a big article on ESPN.com, Major League Baseball, obviously, the Major League Baseball portion of that had a big article on him, and they'd be surprised if he wasn't. In fact, the Baltimore Orioles radio play-by-play guy said that he'd be surprised if Bundy wasn't in the organization, in the big league organization, by the end of summer, or at least ready for it.
I could definitely see that. I'm not going to be surprised to see him moved up to the AA spot within the next month or two. He'll definitely be in the AAA by AAA
Next
affiliate consistently
latest.
at the latest next season. I could see it happening towards the end of July. Him getting moved up to the AAA affiliate. The Orioles are kind of an interesting story as a whole, though. Just them
Right.
already them leading the American League East, shutting out the Yankees last night. Impressive start, 16 wins in a row.
They got a lot
for
of
the O's.
We talked about it earlier. They have a lot of young talent up there in Baltimore. They just haven't put it all together yet, and maybe we're finally starting to see them this season
We're
put
starting
it
to
all
s-
together.
What we're starting to see is vintage Showalter. And Showalter's really starting to get out there and get those guys motivated, and it's a team that wants to play. For prospects, another one that's on the rise, Ty Hensley out of Edmond Santa Fe, is getting raving reviews from all across
Right.
the country. Definitely going to be possibly a top moved into the top 10 draft pick in this
Right.
upcoming draft.
And he's played extremely well this season, as we've seen. The other day, I think he led off the game with a couple RBIs. I'm not sure how he finished up the game. I had to end up going to work,
Sure.
and didn't get to see what happened towards the end. But I know he started the game off like either 1 of 1 or 2 of 2, and I mean he's been just hitting like a monster so far this
what
season.
they're saying in a lot of the local papers and stuff is this guy is the complete package. He can hit, he can throw, he can run, he's got size, he hasn't been injured, and knock on wood that hopefully this guy stays,
Right,
remains
absolutely.
healthy. And really what he reminds me of is kind of like a Bryce Harper with that complete utility package.
Probably not
being-
quite as
maybe not as profound and dynamic in
right, because if you're Bryce Harper, you're hitting 500-foot home runs. It's tough
Absolutely.
for anyone to live up to that.
Absolutely, but they're just saying that this kid, if I had to compare him to a young prospect, he is the complete package. So good for Ty Hensley, good for Edmond Santa Fe, and good for Oklahoma baseball.
Absolutely.
All right, up next we're going to discuss a little pitching. Jared Weaver threw a no-hitter last night. What are your thoughts on that?
I didn't get to watch the game, unfortunately. I was busy, but I heard everything about it. Apparently, it was just an amazing performance. One walk away from a perfect game.
It was a spectacular performance, and I'm sitting here wondering. And we had the Humber.
The perfect game. Right.
just recently, and we didn't get to talk about that last week. But one question that I was going to raise is, and it's already in the back of everybody's mind, is this another year of the pitcher? Pitching dominance continues throughout Major League Baseball.
Right, and to be fair, it was against the Twins.
It was.
Twins are struggling.
Right.
It was.
They can't swing the bats right now at all, but that doesn't take away from the fact that it's 2 no-hitters, almost perfect game twice, because it was 1 walk away from another perfect game.
Absolutely.
The 1 walk and it's just an amazing pitcher performance. I do think that the offenses, have been a little bit better this year than last year. And I do think that, but I do think we're seeing kind of a renaissance back towards pitching, whereas in the past we've seen hitting become a much more important factor.
I'm going to disagree and say that pitching is still very much prevalent in the overall dominating force in Major League Baseball. And here's why. And I'm going to look at teams and I'm going to look at their combined ERAs. Washington sits atop of the league with a combined ERA of 2.47. St. Louis is not far behind them at 2.81, and then San Francisco is only at 3.24. And that's only the National League, and the National League is very much a pitching dominated league. And the American League is a hitting dominated league with teams like Texas and the Yankees off to great starts. But you go back and you talked about taking that no-hitter with a grain of salt against Minnesota. Keep in mind, that's a team with Justin Morneau and Joe Mauer. So that's 2 tough at-bats.
Right.
Who have been consistent hitters, even in a slumping Twins organization. So fantastic. I'm just still baffled by what these pitchers are doing. And I'm really interested to see... I'm really actually what kind of baffles me about this pitching deal is Philadelphia. Everyone talked about their amazing starting rotation coming into this year. Sits in 6th in the league with a 3.38 ERA,
which still is pretty good. As a team ERA, because does that not take into account the bullpen as well? Or is that just starting pitching?
No, I think that does take in I think that does take in the bullpen.
It'd be interesting to see what the numbers are for simply the starting rotation.
Right.
But I mean, 3.38 is still a pretty solid ERA.
But I mean,
as a team,
Washington's only given up 60 earned runs this year. St. Louis is 7 runs behind that, and San Francisco is 17 runs behind the Nats at 77 earned runs this year.
when the Nationals have a good pitching rotation, we've talked about that. They've got a good young rotation leading. Obviously, Steven Strasburg leading the way there.
Mm-hmm.
He's finally healthy and dominating hitters like we saw when he first debuted in the league.
Tell me, is there really like a person out there who is honestly rooting against the Nationals? I mean, let's be real.
I wouldn't think so.
Let's be real. I know, and DJ, I'm gonna say this because you're a National League guy. Your Braves are in that same division.
Yeah.
But is it not fantastic for baseball to have our nation's capital have one of the best teams in baseball right now?
I totally agree with you. As a Braves fan, I dislike the Phillies, the Mets, but I find it hard to root against the Nationals. Just
Right,
like
you don't root
explained.
against teams that don't do it as often.
And keep in mind, just a few years ago, less than a decade ago, this team was the Expos.
Right.
Yeah.
So, it's a complete turnaround, and they've really become a success story. And some people are wondering, is it this year, or are they a year away from making a solid, deep run into the playoffs?
They made some really key additions to their pitching staff this offseason.
Absolutely, they did.
Edwin Jackson and Gio Gonzalez, they are pitching lights out right now. That contributes to them having one of the lowest ERAs in the league right now.
Absolutely.
And their hitting is doing well as well. Obviously, Bryce Harper has come on into the league, doing extremely well over there too.
What is the limit for Bryce Harper? What do you see him doing in his career?
Ooh. It depends on, health.
I understand he's only 19 years old.
He's only
It's hard to
19. He's
project.
only 19 years old. It's really, really, really hard to ever buy into the hype of somebody of such a young prospect. But I mean, we've looked at how Strasburg, he's had injury issues, but he's coming back and he's coming on. And anytime we've ever seen him pitch, he's been absolutely dominant. And you just gotta wonder, is Bryce Harper going to be the same situation from the hitting perspective?
Right.
And so the sky is the limit for this kid, and he's got a fantastic, bright future. As long as he keeps a level head and stays injury free, the kid definitely looks to be setting possibly a record setting hitter.
Yeah. I agree with you. The sky is a limit. As far as him keeping his head, he's shown signs already of him being full of himself and whatnot in the minor leagues when he got into that confrontation with the pitcher.
Yeah.
But I totally agree with you.
Yeah.
Moving on to another great player, arguably the best all-around player in the game today. What are your thoughts on Matt Kemp's season so far?
Bobby, go ahead.
Phenomenal, unheard of. I mean, it's pretty tough to describe the kind of season Matt Kemp is having right now. I mean,
Let me throw some numbers at you right now. His batting average is .411. His on-base percentage is .500. His slugging percentage, .856. This is ridiculous. He's making a mockery.
he's already got 12 home runs.
He's making a
25
mockery
RBIs.
of National League pitching is what he's doing right now.
What kills me is all of his home runs. Only one of his 12 home runs has not been an opposite field home run. The other 11 have either been to dead center field or have been opposite field home runs. And if you've ever been to Chavez Ravine, that's a hard thing to do because that's a very, very deep ballpark.
The ball does not carry out there.
No, it doesn't. When you're hitting opposite field shots, you are in prime position to be having to maintain a high batting average
Once he
for the
starts
rest of the year.
Pulling the ball a little bit more as well, it's just going to be easier to get a few more hits. He's just going to be...
The guy, he's had 90 at bats, 27 runs, 37 hits, 4 doubles, 12 home runs, an RBI of 25, who sits tied with Josh Hamilton in that category. And Josh Hamilton's having another monster year.
Right,
I think it's kind of unusual that we have a guy that's that's hitting .395 with 9 home runs, and we're having to talk about somebody who's better than him at this point in the year.
And look at that. Matt Kemp's slugging percentage is .856. His OPS, 1.356. Those numbers are insane.
No, I've never seen this before.
Video game numbers as well.
Right,
That's
exactly.
video game numbers.
Exactly.
And, I think this really comes back to, they were talking on ESPN radio the other day, and Buster Olney was talking about how he spent some time with Matt Kemp over the summer. They kind of have a personal relationship. He said, I've never seen drive and determination like this from any player in Major League Baseball. The guy was out there doing NFL workouts. He's like, usually, that's something I expect to see like at NFL training camp. No, this guy was out there. He would just move station to station to station, spending hours developing his game. And, remember, this guy is just a couple years shy of, that whole Rihanna situation and him wanting to be Mr. LA. I think Matt Kemp has really finally settled back down, and now he has become the face of Los Angeles right now, with definitely being the most hot athlete out there. And keep in mind, the Lakers are still in the playoffs and they still have Kobe. And so it's finally nice for the Dodgers to have some leeway and some influence out there with Matt Kemp leading the charge.
There is one thing he needs to work on, and you can look at those numbers, and I guarantee you can tell me exactly what I'm thinking of.
Stolen bases.
His strikeouts are a little high. He's got 24 already on the year.
I agree with that.
He needs to get those strikeouts down a little bit.
Yeah.
And he will be, but of course, you take that with a grain of salt because he does have 17 walks as well.
Sure.
17 walks as well. But if he gets those strikeouts down a little bit, he's going to be unstoppable.
What I want to talk to you, DJ just brought up a great point. Stolen bases. He's got 2.
Yeah, he was claiming to be a 50-50 guy at the beginning of the season. Is that correct?
Correct.
Right.
Okay.
And last year he was on track for the 40-40, and he was 1 home run shy instead of being the stolen base. And so this guy is a guy who can steal bases. Mm-hmm. And I wonder if that's
Don
Mattingly on that. Trying to alter, his club from being a small ball typical National League club to being a team that can really slug with the best of those that are in the American League. And so I see a lot of similarities between an American League ball club and this Dodgers club because that 1-2 punch, Matt Kemp and Andre Ethier, and assuming Ethier stays healthy, it's interesting that you have a guy that people are walking Matt Kemp and taking a risk against Andre Ethier. And that's really, really scary when Andre Ethier is also putting up fantastic numbers.
Can Matt Kemp put the Dodgers on his back and carry them to the World Series?
I think so. Greg Spencer, who is our huge Dodgers, and he's our Dodgers fan, Dodgers insider.
Absolutely.
He thinks that the Dodgers need to make another pick up in the middle of the lineup, and I agree. But
they need maybe a little bit more protection for Matt Kemp.
Absolutely.
They have Ethier after. Maybe you find someone to put in front of Kemp.
Yeah.
So, like a solid.
I think the way Kershaw is pitching right now for the Dodgers, I think he's really dealing right now. So I think they're in good shape. I think this is a really, really balanced ball club. So would I be surprised to see the Dodgers in the World Series? Absolutely not. Would I be surprised for them to make an exit in the NLCS? No, not at all. Because I think that this is a team that is slightly flawed, and they're not the complete package yet. So let's see what happens to this team at the trade deadline, and then we'll see what happens to the Dodgers from there.
Great segment, guys. Unfortunately, we have to take a quick break. We will be right back talking a little Junior Seau.
Tragedy. We will be discussing that as soon as we get back, so stay tuned.
Whether you're a weekend warrior or a high school athlete, injuries happen. The physicians at Oklahoma Sports and Orthopedic Institute are ready to help you get back to your game. This team of highly trained orthopedic surgeons and sports medicine physicians specialize in the prevention and treatment of all sports-related injuries, as well as comprehensive spine care, joint replacement, and fracture care. If you find yourself on the sidelines, call 360-6764 or log on to osoi.com. OSOI, get back to your game.
Welcome back to In the Dugout. All right, after that segment, we kind of have to talk a little something that's a little more sobering, and everyone is familiar with what happened yesterday, and our thoughts and condolences go out to everyone that was affected by the Junior Seau tragedy out in San Diego. But already people are making the argument and starting to bring up, was there something wrong with his head and was it football related?
I thought about it a lot, and obviously you guys might not know this, but my family has been affected a lot by suicide. But you look at it, it's a very selfish act. He may have thought he was making a statement about concussion-related injuries or whatever, and when it comes down to it, it just doesn't matter. It's a selfish act that somebody commits because it's a cry for attention, whether it be from his ex-wife, his children, his girlfriend, whoever. It's a selfish act from a selfish person, and obviously it's very sad that he thought he had to do this. But regardless of whether it's concussion-related or not, it's a permanent solution to a temporary problem, and
I agree with you on that last bit. That's a very, very powerful statement, that permanent solution to a temporary problem. I absolutely agree with that. But, I'm going to go ahead and take this, and I think that there was obviously something very, very, very wrong in Junior Seau's head. And keep in mind, this is a guy, when he retired, everyone talked about what a wonderful, warm character he was and how good he was for the league. And he had a very, very rough background growing up as a child. And for him making it in the league and being such a success story, it was one of the warmest stories for the NFL for a long time. And I admired Junior Seau as a kid. I loved it. I mean, he was one of my favorite players to watch. And so it's very, very sad. And I look at it and, this is a guy who reportedly never had a concussion once in the NFL. And so
that's something you have to be skeptical of. How many times did he just simply play
through it? Absolutely. Right. And so I'm just wondering, and I think this guy really had something knocked loose in his head. And I think it's just sad because I think the guy got very, very, very sick. And then, never sought the treatment for it and never went out. And he did commit a selfish act. But I think the guy was very ill. Anyway, what this really wants me to tie to is, I wonder, is the concussion policy and head injury policy in other sports, is the NFL going in the right direction, and should other sports begin to follow suit with other head injury policies in order to prevent stuff, from like the Junior Seau tragedy from possibly happening?
My take on this is, while I'm glad that they're trying to do everything they can to avoid concussions, the fact of the matter is that football is a violent sport. You can't completely eliminate the possibility of a concussion. It's just the way it happens. People get out there and try to hit people.
Sure.
That's the point of football.
Sure.
And while I'm glad that they're trying to curb the tide of these concussions that have become a complete, it's just been a huge problem these last few years, and I'm glad that they're trying to do something about it. But I feel like sometimes they're taking away what the game is.
So, and from that, I'll say from the other aspect, I think the biggest policy that needs to really be addressed is, I think the time that these kids need to sit out needs to be
right. There needs to be a mandatory. The NBA has instituted a fantastic concussion policy,
right,
where you have to go through strenuous tests to see if you get the symptoms back, and until you pass all of those tests, you cannot be allowed to play in the NBA, and that's the way the NFL should play.
And I agree, and and I think that they're Major League Baseball is one, and that's something we've been
obviously
talking about.
Concussions are a little bit more rare in
baseball,
a non-contact sport like baseball.
Yeah,
but they're still somewhat of a problem.
Yeah, absolutely. You could have collisions out there.
Right,
people run into the fence,
balls hit in the face,
hit in the head. So. I just wonder, should there be more and more steps taken? Because obviously there's nothing you can do in baseball unless you want to make them wear helmets at all times.
Unless you completely change the game.
Yeah, and so,
And they did change that. They made them, because recently they went from wearing those one earpiece batting helmets. They made them to wear two now.
Yeah.
It's safer batting helmets.
There was an incident recently with Eric Chavez. He was taken out of the game because he had concussion-like symptoms after diving for a ball at third base and banging his head on the ground.
Right.
So they are taking precaution.
Sure.
They're doing as much as they can.
Sure, and
Exactly.
that's just really the biggest thing that I want, and I want organizations, and I really hope, because 5 years ago we didn't. It's amazing that 5 years ago we didn't realize, the implications that concussions can have and the negative repercussions that they have. So I really hope that all of these professional organizations are really starting to say this is a serious issue, and we've really got to protect our athletes, outside of the sport as well, and make sure that they have a safe rehabilitation process, and so that they can have their head in order.
Right.
in
So
order
when
to
they
get
come
back
back,
into the
they are
league.
completely healthy.
Absolutely.
Just for entertainment, I was reading an article on Deadspin.com about Junior Seau and a former war veteran and how they met in a bar, and basically Junior Seau, he befriended him, told the guy he was his hero and all this stuff. It's a really interesting story. If you have time, go read it.
That sounds very interesting. We'll definitely have to put a link on that, and we'll definitely move on to that.
Speaking of Deadspin, did you guys read that Sarah Phillips article on Deadspin? That is a crazy story.
Yeah.
And I don't think we've seen the last of that either.
Yeah. All right, DJ. Baylor.
Baylor. We are discussing Baylor.
A rare occurrence.
You talked about
usually in Norman, Oklahoma.
It seems like we've been talking a lot about Baylor lately.
I know.
This past year.
I know. It's been a
Football,
banner year.
basketball.
It's been a banner year for Baylor athletics.
This is the year of the Bear in the Big 12, I guess.
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
Wow. Sweeping Texas A&M. Huge series. Just recently. And then losing to UT San Antonio.
But then they go out on a 3-game winning streak. They beat UT Arlington and then New Mexico State twice. And New Mexico State's usually not too shabby.
And UT Arlington's never really an easy out. No, that's a team that's beaten OU.
Right.
So no.
But the stinker against UT San Antonio.
All right. My question for you guys is Baylor the clear-cut favorite to win the Big 12?
I think yes at this point. They've only got 2 series left. If they win... I mean, they'll probably... It's tough to say what they'll do in Norman because you got to ask which Oklahoma team is going to show up.
Sure.
Texas, they might win 1 out of 3 there, I would think, if they're going to play in Austin. Oh, no, they play 1 at home, so they might win 2 of 3 there. They might win 1 in Austin. I don't know why they play 1 in Baylor and 2 in Texas. That doesn't make much sense, I guess.
No, absolutely. So... No, I
if
want
they
to
win 2 of 3 the rest of the way in the rest of the Big 12, they'll obviously win. I think they can afford to win 1 of 3 in both of these last 2 series.
I'm excited to see him come to Oklahoma City for the Big 12 tournament because that seems like a wild card every year steps up. And I think Oklahoma could be that wild card team this year.
Right, absolutely. They're a team that's
suddenly
dangerous.
show up in the Big 12 tournament.
They just for some reason are inconsistent.
Oh, absolutely, and it's youth. It's youth, but Baylor, God, they're
doing it in every way. Sometimes they're blowing people out with scoring 15 runs a game like they did against New Mexico State, and other times they beat A&M 1-0. They're doing it with pitching. I mean, they just pretty much are playing the best possible baseball that they can.
Anyway, they're rolling. We're rolling. We're gonna go ahead and do some charging the mound after this, and you guys stay tuned, and we'll be right back.
We're doing high heat.
It's no coincidence the Toyota Tundra has received the most dependable large pickup award from J.D. Power and Associates. Not once, not twice, but 6 years in a row. Now that's a statement no other truck can make. The full-size Tundra from Toyota.
Welcome back to In the Dugout. It's time for a segment that we haven't done in a while. It's time for Charging the Mound. So, DJ,
I'm ready.
It's your turn to take the spotlight. Let's go ahead and get this started.
I might be a little rusty. It's been a while. Let me stretch real quick.
It's okay. We're gonna grade tough today.
Yeah, we're gonna. So I'm gonna go ahead and start off. We talked about pitching earlier into the show, and I want to ask you, DJ, who is the best pitcher in Major League Baseball right now?
Being in the NL East, I'd like to say Roy Halladay, and we did light him up yesterday, by the way. 6 runs and 5 1/3. Just going to throw that in there. But I have to go with Justin Verlander. 24-5 last year. He's a strikeout artist. I say he's got the best stuff, and he knows how to pitch, so that would make him the best pitcher in baseball right now.
That's a solid answer.
I completely agree with him. He knows how to get deep in games, gives you innings with a decent pitch count. I'm going to give you a 9.
Wow.
I'm gonna give you a 7. And the only reason why I say that is because I think Strasburg is actually having the better year right now. And I say that because I watched Verlander pitch against New York last weekend, and you know, Detroit lost that game for multiple other reasons. They got problems for some reason, and they've kind of been inconsistent in my opinion. But I think Verlander is definitely a safe pick, so that's why I gave you a 7.
All right, let me flip the question back on you guys. Can Strasburg be as good as Justin Verlander one day?
Ooh, it depends on if he stays healthy.
He stays healthy.
If he stays healthy, absolutely.
Right, that delivery he has sets him up for a plethora of injuries.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting to see whether or not he can stay healthy. If he can,
Sure.
Right.
So, I mean, if Strasburg stays healthy, it's another kid that's the sky is the limit. Very, very young in his career.
Right.
We're only in our 3rd year of watching the Steven Strasburg sensation. So, you know, it's amazing that this guy has already become a household name, and he was when he was drafted from San Jose State. So, San Diego State. San Diego State. That's right. He was an Aztec.
Yes, he was.
And so, yeah, I think the guy can be a Justin Verlander, and it's really hard because Justin Verlander is just now. He may not even be peaking yet. He's last season was incredible, and he's really, really young. Verlander came onto the scene. Remember when he threw that no-hitter for the Tigers, and then all of a sudden, a year and a half later, here he is, the Cy Young and MVP winner. So wow, it's really going to be tough because both these guys are still relatively young. I mean, Verlander's a relatively young pitcher. So it's going to be interesting to see where he peaks, and then you got to watch how Strasburg continues to develop and see where they were at this point in their career, where Verlander's in like his 5th or 6th year, and see where Strasburg is in his 5th year. So we'll see how that is, and then you can start making the comparison of, you know, who will be better by the end of their career.
Totally agreed.
okay.
I give you a 10 on that, by the way, Trevor.
Thank you.
Okay. I'm going to ask you, we're going to go a little bit away from baseball to something pretty prominent right now. Obviously, everyone a little disappointed that Derrick Rose tore his ACL, but it does, I think, open up the East for one specific team. Who do you see coming out of the Eastern Conference now that the Chicago Bulls are without Derrick Rose?
I think there's no question that Miami has a door wide open for them as long as they take care of business like they should. They have a pretty easy walk into the NBA Finals. I really don't see another team from the East that's a threat to Miami.
The only one I can think of is Indiana.
That's
maybe
the only one that I can think of either.
I don't think they're ready either.
But even then, didn't Miami take 3 of 4 from Indiana this year?
I don't know.
Or was it 2 of 3? They took 2 of 3.
3, yeah. I mean, Boston, they're old. I'd like to say they have a chance to upset the Heat, but I just don't see it. I don't see it.
I think the Heat. I think they.
Even then, Heat.
Even with Derrick Rose, the way that the Heat are peaking right now, and the way that the Bulls were trying to get Derrick Rose worked back into their lineup and stuff, I was going to take the Heat to be the clear winner of the
Heat are
East anyway.
Playing. Obviously, they were kind of slumping towards the end of the year, but
Sure.
apparently they have the ability to just turn it on.
They're firing on all
literally
cylinders.
just turned it on once the playoffs started. And I mean, granted, it is against the Knicks, who no one knows which Knicks team will show up.
Sure.
Apparently, the Knicks are better without Amari and Carmelo on the same floor. So apparently, this injury to Amari might have been a good thing, where he just punched a fire extinguisher.
That was stupid.
That's what I'm saying. Who does that? Why would you do that and hurt your team's playoff chances like that? But maybe it's good for the Knicks because now Carmelo can just ball hog it up, take as many shots as he wants, and just try and, just
Try and
drain-
win it himself.
Right,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah, yeah.
And I mean the Knicks were playing well and that's the way they were playing. So
Yeah.
That's a
maybe.
good point.
So I'll give you a 10 on that one, DJ. You
Yeah, I'll
hit the nail
agree.
on the head. The obvious answer was, the Heat. If you would have said the Hawks, I would have been a little disturbed.
Right, because I mean, the Hawks don't even have a home court. They can't even. Have you seen the Hawks when they play in Atlanta? They can't even sell out their home arena for a playoff game.
What's interesting to me
It's
is
terrible.
You know what's funny is if you watched the first round of the playoffs last year with Dallas, the team that would go on and win it. You looked up top, that thing wasn't even close to full.
It's because, and you know why? It's the same thing that I was talking to you earlier, making that joke about certain Red Sox fans. And I know people that did this for a fact, because I had to deal with it when I was in school or on Facebook, on the internet, whatever. People from Dallas jumping on the bandwagon as Mavericks fans.
Sure. That's a market that that's what kills me. And I'm glad to see the Rangers are starting to get more consistent.
But people weren't Rangers fans
But people
until
were-
they started getting good.
Yeah,
I agree.
And so, all right, DJ, next one. We're going to stay on the topic of the NBA. Rick Carlisle has been in rare form lately with cussing. We remember him kicking the ball earlier and him ranting and raving about the dirty play from the Oklahoma City Thunder. What do you take of that? And then how do you feel about Dirk Nowitzki being able to get all of these calls in the playoffs? And what have you thought about this series and the officiating?
I think the officiating, has been on point. As far as Rick Carlisle's, it's playoff basketball. Everything's more intense. You're going to see that out of the coach. You're going to see that out of the players. It's just a matter of being playoff basketball. As far as Dirk getting all the calls, he's a superstar.
Well, I literally, I don't know if you guys saw this in the game. Sorry to interrupt you, but I saw a play where Dirk Nowitzki literally cleared out on Nick Collison, clearly
and
extended
that was
his
where
arm,
Nick Collison
and they
picked up
called a
his fifth foul.
on
Yes.
Nick Collison.
Yes.
And I'm sitting there thinking, how can a clear offensive foul like that be called on Nick Collison?
Absolutely. I thought that was a bogus call.
There's going to be some bad calls. There's going to be, it's just playoff basketball.
Sure.
Everything's more intense.
Sure.
On another note, you can pretty much call a travel on Dirk Nowitzki pretty much anytime he touches the ball.
Just about any time.
Yeah.
All right, so DJ, who wins game 3?
I'm going to go with Dallas. Dallas in a rout. I'm going to say a rout. I'm going to say at least 10 points.
Really?
At least 10 points.
So do you think the Oklahoma City splits down there, or do
I
you
think if we come back to Oklahoma City 2-2, we're in big trouble. I think we have to get at least one in Dallas.
I think here's how I see the series going down. I think it's over. They can't beat us 4 times. That's
Really?
just, they can't beat the Thunder 4 times.
They could have very easily took 2 from us in
Right.
Oklahoma City.
And I think that was
and
devastating
you got to look
to
at
them.
no, and you got to look at it this way. They played about as good a basketball as Dallas can possibly play. The Thunder, especially Kevin Durant, didn't play particularly well, and still came out with those wins.
Right.
And you got a flash in Game 2 of what Oklahoma City can do to Dallas when they are playing well.
Sure.
When they got up 16, and then they just started turning the ball over again, and didn't play particularly well the rest of the game. So when you look at it, Oklahoma City is clearly the better team. Dallas pretty much has no chance to beat them 4 times. I do agree with you that Dallas will win Game 3, but I think that we win Game 4 and Game 5. The series is over in 5. But if Oklahoma City does win Game 3, it's going to be a sweep.
See, I don't think it's going to... I think the Thunder win Game 3. I think we win Game 3 tonight, and I think we win convincingly. I think that we actually win in a rout tonight. I think we win by 10 or 12 on their home floor because I think Durant's really going to get going tonight, and I really think that Westbrook has continued... Westbrook just annihilates this Mavericks team, and he did it last year,
Westbrook just... As much as people hate on Westbrook... They just don't understand Westbrook, and I've made the argument, and I'm probably one of the biggest Westbrook fans in the world. People just don't understand that he's not the way he plays isn't a selfish style of basketball.
No,
because you can look at those.
He's
fast
just a
breaks
different
with him
type
and
of point guard.
When you look at him on those fast breaks with him and Durant, he always stops, turns around, gives Durant the ball for the dunk. That's not a selfish player.
No, absolutely
and
not.
What it is Westbrook is a competitor. What he cares about is winning, and when he thinks that he's the best opportunity for the team to win, he's going to take the shot himself. And
Absolutely.
that's what
So
Westbrook is.
I agree. But what I was saying is I say the Thunder win convincingly tonight. I'm going to take Oklahoma City by 12 because I think Dallas is going to be absolutely devastated from those two close losses where the Thunder played really, really bad and they missed their biggest opportunity to maybe make this series a run of it.
Series.
And, make it. And so I'm going to say Oklahoma City routs them tonight, loses a nail biter in Game 4, and then comes back and wins it in Game 5. But
I give you a 10 on your answer.
I
completely
DJ
agree
10.
with you.
Yeah. One quick note before we wrap this up. The Heartland Classic schedule has come officially out. That will be airing on zpreps.com coming up this summer starting June 18th. Opening ceremonies and Home Run Derby will be on zpreps. The games that you look at, Oklahoma and Texas will be Friday, June 22nd, and Texas and Georgia, last year's championship game, will be 3:30 p.m. on Wednesday, June 20th. The addition of Team Colorado, it's going to be a great tournament, so we look forward and we hope to see you guys coming down to Norman to see some great high school baseball. Anyways, for Bobby Rose and for Trevor Rogers, DJ Bradshare, it's been a fantastic show. We're glad to back. See you around. We'll see you guys next week. All right.
Thunder up.
The sun came out today. We're born again. There's new grass.